What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we're going to be doing a book review of Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger. Now, before we dive into the review, let's first go over what is this book about. New Bremen, Minnesota, 1961. The Twins were playing their debut season. Ice-cold root beers were selling out at the soda counter of Halderson's drugstore, and hot stuff comic books were a mainstay on every barbershop magazine rack. It was a time of innocence and hope for a country with a new, young president. But for 13-year-old Frank Drum, it was a grim summer in which death visited frequently and assumed many forms: accident, nature, suicide, murder. Frank begins the season preoccupied with the concerns of any teenage boy, but when tragedy unexpectedly strikes his family, which includes his Methodist minister father, his passionate artistic mother, Juilliard-bound older sister, and wise beyond his years kid brother, he finds himself thrust into an adult world full of secrets, lies, adultery, and betrayal, suddenly called upon to demonstrate a maturity and gumption beyond his years. Okay guys, so if you're new to the channel, the way that I normally structure my reviews is I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being the things about the book that I enjoyed, the bad being the things that I didn't care so much for, and these are preferential things like maybe a character I didn't like, the prose, the length, those kinds of things. But then I go into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up, and I break this down into 5 categories. But before we jump into that, let's first go over the good. So what were some things about this book that I enjoyed? Man, just about everything. I absolutely love this book. Just to be transparent with you guys, this book is in the running for book of the year for me. It was so good. So what did I like about this book? The characters, first and foremost, were absolutely fantastic. They were expertly written. They are so relatable. And on top of that, they're personable. And what I mean is that it almost feels like you're part of the family when you're reading this story. So this is that coming of age story that we all kind of want and know and love. So there is like familiarity there as far as, us being based in the early 60s. But not only that, this is small town USA. So you could see this occurring just about anywhere. But the way that these characters are written, like I said, it feels like family. So that is it. That to me, the characters are unforgettable. Nathan Drum is a new all-time favorite character of mine. He's definitely in the top 5. To see how William Kent Kruger was able to write from the perspective of a minister's son and do it well, it's probably the first time that I've ever seen it done well. I've seen it done several times, and normally it ends up making the pastor or the bad guy or somebody that's stupid or uncompassionate, those kind of things. But Kruger really does an excellent job of pulling back that curtain a little bit of what it actually is like to be not only a minister, but to deal with a mildly dysfunctional family and to see what actually takes place inside this home. There's still a minister's family is still a family, and there's still dysfunction and imperfection there. And so we see all of the nitty gritty details that you would otherwise miss. A lot of times when people think of a pastor's family, they think of this perfect little cookie cutter family, but there's trials and struggles that they have to deal with, not only externally, but also internally. And so to see how Kruger is able to articulate these things in a way that doesn't make Nathan, the pastor, the father, feel like a caricature of what he's supposed to be, or feel stupid, or lacks empathy or compassion or love or mercy towards others. Like I said, he just wrote Nathan's character absolutely flawlessly, in my opinion. So the characters are exemplary. So now let's move on to the plot. Now the plot is great. We definitely are moving along. And there's not really a page that's wasted. Pretty much every scene is necessary in one form or the other. There isn't really a lot of downtime. Now, this isn't one of those where it's foot on the gas the whole way, but even the moments that are slowed down, these are those moments where we're building that character development and we're building a relationship with our characters. So yeah, it is just top tier. But then, like Boy's Life, you kind of have this subplot that's underlying the entire story while we're looking through the eyes of Frank, being the middle child of the family, the older brother. And so you have that leering question in the background of what is going on, why are these things taking place, while you're trying to just sort of experience things through the eyes of a 12 or 13-year-old boy. So alongside the character, we're wrestling with that dichotomy of a 12 or 13-year-old boy that is just trying to enjoy his summer while these adult things are going on, and he's trying to rationalize them in his own mind. Yeah, it's, like I said, it is just fantastic. So let's talk about the setting. The way the setting is written, it is written specific enough that you know exactly where we are, but also open to mild interpretation. So we don't get into the nitty gritty of every little detail. And I think a lot of that is so that way Kruger is able to paint a picture and we're sort of filling in the gaps. And it just works. It just works. So the characters, the plotting, the pacing, the prose are all stellar. I really don't have a lot to complain about, but man, the emotional highs and lows of this book are extreme on both ends of the spectrum. I've never read a work of fiction in my life where I can recall getting to a point to where what I read affected me so much that I had to put the book down and come back to it on a different day. There is a certain scene, and for those of you that have read this book, you know which scene I'm referencing. But there is a scene that is so heavy that once I got to it, it was about 10 o'clock at night. I just had to close my book and just chew on it a while and hope that I didn't go to bed and dream about these kinds of things. And it just really weighed on me. I really wanted to get back to the story, but I needed time to sort of sit and think. Now I get it. It's a work of fiction. I know that might sound silly to some of you. It sounds silly to me to say, but it really just affected me. And it very well could be because I'm older. It could be because I'm a dad and those kind of things affect me a little bit more. But I don't want to diminish Kruger's expert writing because he evoked emotions out of me that were intentional and affected me with the severity that he intended as well. Like I said, it was flawlessly done. So this leads me into the bad. What were some things about this book that I didn't much care for? And really there's only one thing, and it's just a personal preference thing. And it's that the mystery element of this book was pretty easy to figure out. You don't have all of the pieces right out of the gate, but you do have them at about the halfway mark. So about the halfway mark of the book, I knew what was taking place. I knew what was going on. I sort of already had a lot of the answers to my questions. So that isn't I'm not going to say that's a mark against Kruger. I think I don't think that he was trying to like pull a fast one on us. And I don't think this book was written so that we would have to figure out, who done it kind of thing. So that wasn't his goal. So I don't want to necessarily detract from the book, but I will say that the mystery part of it wasn't a huge mystery to me. I think it's pretty easy to figure out. And there are comparisons that I would like to make with this book and other forms of media. But if I did, there would be spoilers for both the book and this other work. And so I really, really, really want to make this comparison. But for your sake, for those of you that have not read it, I'm going to refrain. So if you're curious, leave me a comment down below. If you've already read the book and you want to know what other piece of work I'm referring to, I'm happy to oblige. But just know that it will spoil this book and this other work of fiction. But otherwise, I really didn't have anything to complain about. This book was fantastic. And it's a short book. And with it being a short book, I probably could have read this in 2 days, but I really didn't want it to wrap up very quickly. So I think I finished it in about 4. And it's just because I really wanted to take my time with it. And it's just that good. You just want to stay in it. Now, I will say, just to sort of push back against myself here, to argue against myself about the mystery, me being able to figure it out, there are some things in this book that you don't get answers to. And I loved that. I loved that there wasn't something to everything. I know some people aren't as crazy about that, but I love that there are some mysteries that stay mysteries in this book. So yeah, that's another thumbs up from me. So this leads me into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up. And I break this down into 5 categories, starting with violence and brutality. Now for violence and brutality, I'm going to give this a 4. It's not very high. You don't see a lot of violence in this book. There isn't really anything brutal that takes place, with maybe one exception. And even then, I wouldn't say it's brutal or it's overly violent, but I would say maybe there's a scene or two in here that could edge on something that's a little more violent. But like I said, it's very realistic. So I don't think the violence that's in here is explicit or anything like that. I don't think it's over the top. So I don't think it's anything that's going to push anybody away from this book. So this leads me into category 2, which is sexually explicit content. And for this, I'm going to give a 2. Yeah, it's not really in here. There's a couple of mentions of, a 13-year-old boy is starting to notice girls. He's starting to pay attention to the women around him that he finds attractive. And so like there's a scene where, again, this is in the 60s. So a lot of the more explicit things are nefarious for the time. So for instance, his neighbor has her underwear hanging on a clothesline and he's eyeing her underwear through the gap in the fence. It's those kind of things. It's a 13-year-old boy curiosity towards the opposite sex, but really it's not really in here. The only other scene that's mentioned is that there is some adultery mentioned in here, but like I said, it's mentioned. It isn't expounded upon or it isn't explicitly stated. It's just mentioned that it has taken place at some point. But I don't think that's anything that's going to pull anybody away from this book. So this leads me into category 3, which is language. Now for language, I'm going to give this a 5. So again, we're dealing with about a 13-year-old boy. And there is some language in here. He's starting to push the limits a little bit about what he can or cannot say, what he's allowed to say, especially as the son of a pastor. And sometimes he lets things fly a little bit. Also, you have some of the more rough and gruff characters that are a little bit older than him, that they'll like to show how tough they are by using adult language. So yeah, there's some language in here. There's one in particular that I know most of us are really not fond of, and it's used a few times. And in one scene, it's used like 5 or 6 times. But other than that, I would say it's not really in here, but just be forewarned that there is some language in here, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be something that holds you back. I definitely do think this is one of those moments where you can just skip past that and be fine, in my opinion. So I would say if you like the movie Stand By Me and the language in that movie didn't really hold you back, then I don't think it'll hold you back here. So this leads me into category 4, which is gratuitous inclusions. And for gratuitous inclusions, this is an absolute 0. There is nothing in here that is, there's no sort of inclusivity that is in here that is gratuitous in nature whatsoever. Everything is handled very, very well. I didn't see any agenda, nothing like that. The author wasn't preaching to us about anything, which is kind of ironic because it's talking about a preacher, but there's nothing gratuitous in here at all, in my opinion. And the final category is dark themes. Now for dark themes, I also include heavy themes. And for dark themes, I'm going to give it a 0, but for heavy themes, I'm going to give it a 6, maybe even a 7. Let's bump it up to a 7 because that one scene was really, really heavy on me. Not because, I'm trying to navigate this without giving spoilers, not because the author was intentionally trying to just pull us down into the mire and the muck. It's not that at all. It was that there was a particular scene that's heavy. It's meant to be heavy. And it is the event that changes not just this family, but the entire town. And so, like I said, it just weighed on me. It weighed on me a little bit different, I think, because I'm a dad and I've just gotten older. I've gotten a little, quicker to react emotionally to things as far as a tearjerker goes. Yeah, there is one scene in here, in my opinion, that's pretty heavy, but not in a negative way. So if I'm just listing like, is it heavy or not? And to what extent? The answer is yes, it is heavy. And it's very heavy in my opinion, but not in a negative way. It's meant to do this. It's meant to evoke these feelings and emotions out of you. Like I said, I don't think it's anything that's going to hold you back from picking it up. So this leads me into the final question, which is, Would I recommend this to a Christian? And the answer is absolutely yes. It is so good. It is so, so good. Maybe with a couple of exceptions. I know that some people, have zero tolerance for using GD. It's in here. So, just letting you know ahead of time, if you're one of those people that has zero tolerance for that type of language, I understand and even agree with you to a large extent, but it's in here. But I don't think it's used to be inflammatory towards us. Do I think the author could have went without using it? I mean, probably, but he was also just writing real life and putting it on page for us. So I don't think it's anything that's unrealistic. And again, I use the analogy of like Saving Private Ryan. Is there heavy language in Saving Private Ryan? Absolutely there is, but it would not be the same, nor would it be accurate, especially for the time, if that wasn't in there. So I kind of give it a pass here. It's a little bit different. You guys can roast me in the comments for that. But if you can overlook the language, I think this is going to be a top 10 book for most people, and it rivals Boy's Life. Now for me, Boy's Life was still better. It still takes the cake for numerous reasons, mainly the ending. But other than that, I think that this book is just top tier. It really is one of those timeless books. So overall, guys, what did I think? I absolutely loved Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger. I think that anybody that loves Stand By Me, that loves Boy's Life, you're looking for something similar, I definitely think you're going to find a lot to love here. Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger, it was an 11 out of 10 for me. Like I said, this is an all-timer, not just for the year, but ever. It has definitely just jumped up on my favorite books of all time list and probably knocked several things off because it's just that good. On top of that, the message of grace in this book, the message of mercy and grace in this book and forgiveness is, man, it is overt. It is so strong. So yes, I absolutely would recommend this to a Christian in particular. And I would really recommend this to non-Christians because this is a very good example of what grace and mercy looks like in action, not just from a pastor, but from true Christians and from people that are really wrestling with some difficult things. And you say, it's one of those times where you're looking at, okay, this is what I say that I believe, but am I actually living that belief? Do I really believe it enough that it has taken hold and become a root in who I am so that it comes out through my behavior? So the message of grace and mercy and love and truth is at the forefront of this book from start to finish. So I just can't recommend this book enough. So guys, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me and listening to me ramble about Ordinary Grace for a little bit. Guys, this book is fantastic. Please go pick it up. It is so good. Guys, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. But more than anything, I would ask that you share these videos with your Christian brothers and sisters so that maybe I can be a good resource for them, so that maybe we can spend our time, money, and energy a little more wisely on things that honor the Lord. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.